I think what I had in my 20s when I had immersion in a lot of other artists was enthusiasm. I was something of an essentialist for enthusiasm. Enthusiasm was something that I tried to bring to the table, whatever was going on. Whether it was my study of Buckminster Fuller or my encouragement of Raymond Geiger's fantastic painting, or the listening ear of a friend dealing with someone who was brooding over heartbreak, for example. This enthusiasm doesn't get much exercise anymore. I'm a less enthusiastic person in a lot of ways. The authorities kicked my ass. I'm a broken human being. A lot of strangers came into play in my American spectatorship. But there was a time when I was content to believe myself unknown, not particularly important, but very enthusiastic for the things that were going on. My love, for example, of King Crimson would be storied by now if they were not authors of some sort of strange super government vendetta from the age of my father. And I think it comes out when I look at, for example, at the skating in the Olympics, whether it's Michelle Kwan or um, Trasova, Sasha Trasova. There's a lot of things I really get taken up in. I immerse myself sometimes. I've immersed myself in the study of JFK's strange case. I've immersed myself in the climate change issue, in the fourth dimensional um, authorship of Hollywood media enterprises of a controlling direction. I've read deeply into some individuals, become very interested, and occasionally I've had the opportunity to meet with and enjoy the company of unusual people. Ray was probably the closest thing I ever had to a best friend other than Def Genie. I would have chosen Ray as a friend. They say don't let your friends choose you, choose your friends. That's not possible when you're deaf and growing up poor in Pittsburgh. You take beggars can't be choosers. But my enthusiasm and the issue of my enthusiasm is hardly something that could be disputed. There was a fellow who had a Harvard education who was so taken with one of my stories about Ray that it ended up in his book of short stories. The enthusiasm I had for Raymond's friendship was obvious to everyone. So obvious, in fact, to the girl who ran off with him that she summoned all of her suasion to forbid him to see me because of the way the authorities had begun circling me with intent to kick my ass, which they did. They gave me a horrendous pounding. And with it left a lot of my enthusiasm for things. Certainly, I will never have a kind word for King Crimson. But if you look around me in the background, you can see the strange effects I have. Painting of Greta Thunberg, Chicago Tribune newspaper sack, a hand wringer on the wall, Mazeroski bobblehead, an Ichiro bobblehead. I had a tremendous interest in Ichiro Suzuki's career. I saw it from cover to cover. I saw some of the most enlightening things that I've ever seen from baseball. It's hard to say it because I love Roberto Clemente and I grew up a Maz fan, Bill Mazeroski. And I remember Matty Alou, who played out here in Tacoma. I like the Seattle Mariners best of all in baseball. Just as I think it goes without saying that of all the figure skaters, no one compares to Camilo Valiva. There are things in the world that are treasures and transcend the cultural relativity of the things that force us to wonder how confounded our predicament it is as a species and as people and as individuals and as breathing human minds searching for our integrity. Sometimes you can let all that go in the presence of a friend and just exist happily. Often enough, that's how it was with Ray. There were stories him getting me up at 6 in the morning to check out a sculptor he'd been working on without reporting where he was for over a week. James, you got to get up. Where you been, Ray? That sort of thing. Something to bring a smile to your face as a young poet. There are a lot of anecdotes and a lot of stories that I used to share with a great deal of enthusiasm. I'm not trying to bend anyone's ear about the strange case that Cyril Wecht deposited on my father's son, me, and the way it has been used and played out by gangs like Tat, George Bush, Oliver North, the Bandidos Yankee. There's all sorts of people. And Martha Gellhorn called them insane pygmies. They think they can hold the destiny of our human race and the planet in their hands over petty grudges. They have pot boiler, new age ideas about right and wrong that have very precious little to do with being generous and courteous and showing dignity to your fellow man. I don't know how to take any of it. It's all consuming for some of the intellectuals in our world. And through the authorities, they descended upon me and they kicked my head in. And I'll never be the same. I'm physically alien. I'm spiritually wrecked. It's hard looking back and thinking it could have been different, that none of it had to happen. One cowardly rock star made so much of a completely innocent letter with his hocus pocus that I was destroyed. For 20, 30 years, I haven't seen my best friend in the whole world. It would be like I just saw her yesterday if I could snap my fingers and see her right now. People say she's retarded. She has Down syndrome. She is a brilliant, beautiful Korean girl. The spiritual integrity and the spiritual dimension of Korea shines through that woman like 1,000 worlds of wonder. And I miss her. And I have cried in disbelief from the back of buses in Seattle after 8 years, after 16 years, after 24 years of being without her. How is this possible? I can hardly conceive of it. I'm sure some of it had to do with Obama, the Pittsburgh NAACP, the good old boy network that made laughing stock of sexual dalliances. We need to strike a compromise in our society. I saw a video about JFK. Today they said you would be eaten alive for having affairs like he did. That's too much. We need to have some sort of compromise between the Playboy Society that came up in the age of Sinatra and where we stand now with the squeaky clean drone warriors against infidelity. The drone warriors against infidelity have pulled some awful fast ones. Hillary Clinton padded her brassiere with packs of dough, serving the Axis in the new age of the Axis intelligence system. That's not something that America should have ever considered for President of the United States. And God help us, we got the Axis itself. We need to do better. But for political editorializing, I had some sensibility. It wasn't just enthusiasm, because nobody has enthusiasm for what kind of grinder they get put through when they voice their opinion. I voiced my opinion about divestment from South Africa in the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Was told by a right wing white person, if you try to help black people, they will only turn on you. And he managed to get that fulfilled. Nobody kicked my ass like the secret intelligence wing of the black unions, serving Peter Gabriel, of course, and his high minded ideas that political correctness could be rendered wholly by lying about a perfectly innocent letter to a high school sweetheart. What wasn't innocent in that situation was that they had implanted a nerve agent into my brain, a neurotoxin. And everybody, even Raymond, was having some fun pushing the button that made me cry. He called it the weeping and wailing stages. It was sort of an inside joke. Oh, they broke all sorts of rules. Some of them worked at the Western Pennsylvania Psychiatric and brought the news to the local bar that Jimmy had been 302'd. Hardy har har. They lured me into a law school appointment that I dared to civilly uh, cancel, and arrested me for trespassing when I arrived to an appointment I had been invited to. I had only shown up with intent to cancel. I was just being polite, and they arrested me for defiant trespass. In the weeping and wailing stages, they detonated while they snickered that I didn't have the civil rights movement merits to stare down a 90-day jail sentence while in seizures, while in trauma, while in terror for my life. You could check what the medical community thought. They gave me nuclear magnetic resonance head exam. Yes. So we're talking about people who don't know what they're doing. Or if they do, they're insanely wicked war criminals. People in Seattle think, oh, we can assess this like it's just nothing. You can't assess a Frankenstein crime like it's just nothing. So they don't bother assessing it all. They just sort of have this uh, decoration system. They decorate the the satire, the caricature with likenesses of their own pastiche. It's hard to have any enthusiasm in Seattle. Seattle is a nightmare. But once, when I was wearing my Jimi Hendrix backpack, a girl came up behind me and clutched me. She said, and I had taken her breath away to see the Jimi Hendrix backpack, and I can understand that. We came through a period of digital disconnect. Of course, we got remorselessly decoded from recovery with the COVID bizarre show. But some of us, for one brief and shining moment, snapped out of it. And I think that was the moment for her where she had taken a deep breath and said, I can get home somehow from this. I don't think I'll ever get my enthusiasm back. There's too many guards fearing the effect of genuine happiness from an old man. But I think it might be possible for me to continue writing my poetry. I enjoyed getting some feedback about my book Latinx. And I'll recite one that I worked on all summer and came to the last line after a 40-mile hike to Tipton, Iowa. I came back to Davenport and sat at the Mississippi River. I found the final refrain. It's called the Firefly Song. I have a firefly named Iron Hammer crossed the border to the house next door. Prying eyes have seen this before. Atheist thing we tried to drown in the lake keeps company with the snake. Lights out on memory lane. Tears falling. As rosy early waters of years comes cheap. Man of malevolent moods and a woman disheveled, playing song of the devil. Bury me in Osaka. Made for the pleasure of man in a keepsake box on the streets of shame. There's been a firefly since time began. I have a firefly named Iron Hammer from the soap of the city because I didn't get there in time. She sends me a sign that sets my soul to shine. I am a firefly about to die. Bury me in Osaka. In the West, we sometimes say sayonara.